So, Leo fired you on your first day.
Oh, Daddy.
You start Monday.
I'm really enjoying The Rainmaker so far, but I know it was a 1997 movie with, in addition to being a John Grisham novel, so there was like a long legacy there. Did you have any of that in your mind when you took on the role?
Yeah, no pressure, eh? Not really. Like I definitely honored. I wanted to stand on the shoulders of people like Coppola, Matt Damon. I mean, to take on a source material like Grisham is such a privilege, and I thought it was important to honor that, really. And so I did. I went back to the source material. I ripped through it all, and then sort of let it go and just focused on the script.
Yeah, and the script is elevated in its tension thanks to Dan Fogler's Melvin Pritchard. What can you tell me about Rudy's pursuit of him, or what tips him off that this is an important part of the story?
He's incredible. He's so good. Oh my God, he's creepy, right? Like it's been, I've got to watch some of the episodes recently, and I've managed to see Dan's whole performance, and it's just incredible. But I think that he's moving a little bit crazy throughout those first few episodes. It's kind of, I think anyone would be a bit like, who is this guy and what's his deal? And there were some stage directions that Dan took really well and ran with when we were shooting, about the way that he looks at Rudy and the way that Rudy looks at him, and Dan just really did a good job of creeping me out, and I leaned into it. And I remember we did a scene together once, and it was just the two of us, and we were doing this thing, and I was looking at him thinking, wow, that's Dan Fogler, and he's so good. And we're doing this scene, and we finished, and he kind of looked at me, and he had that kind of look of Melvin, and he kind of cocked an eye, and then he went, hey, great chemistry. And then he turned around and he walked away. And I was just almost hit the floor. I just thought, what? That's Dan Fogler. That's Melvin Pritchard. And I was exhausted, but I don't think I answered your question at all there, but there you go.
Well, he was creepy enough that there was no other choice.
There we go.
Love it. I really enjoy the added layer of Rudy and Sarah's relationship, and how, they're at odds. It's breaking them apart. It puts him in an awkward position, and it kind of, again, elevates the stakes for him. Can you talk about how he deals with having his girlfriend on the opposite side of this very important case for him?
Well, not well. Definitely not well. I think Rudy, there's a lot of tension between his upbringing and his education, and where his sort of heart and his mind are in discord. And I think that she represents something that he very quickly, when he's fired from Tinley Britt, realizes was a part of him that it's important to let go of in the pursuit of truth and honor and honesty. And I think that, therefore, there's also an arrogance to the way that he presents himself sometimes, maybe because of where he comes from and the circles that he's had to move in. So funny you asked that question, because I've not really thought about it, but I don't think he handles it with a lot of grace or kindness in a way that he might have been able to do had he had the courage to have an open conversation with her and not feel like he had to have the world, like the Atlas, and have the world on his shoulders.
Yeah, absolutely. On the other side of the potential romantic spectrum, we have Kelly, who is an important part of the novel and the movie as well. When we first meet her, she's just a mysterious, neighborly figure, but obviously she makes a strong first impression on Rudy. Can you talk about why he kind of feels drawn to inserting himself into her story?
Yeah, he's curious about her. I think partly, on a physical level, because he's the kind of guy that, again, he has a vulnerability and an understanding, I think, because of where he comes from, that sees somebody in a position of vulnerability, like an abusive relationship, and he can't help but stick his foot in it and try and, deal out justice sounds a little bit harsh, but to make sure that person's okay, whichever way he knows how. But I also think there's an element of the tension between Sarah and Kelly, for me, is that she represents this vision in lots of ways that he had through his brother, with the law firm and Leo Drummond and wealth, and sort of bringing himself out of this sort of maybe lower class, slightly more blue collar household. And Kelly represents him coming back to that as he as he spends more time at J-Line and Stone with Bruiser and Deck, and really starts to embrace that part of him that he's been putting away by getting a job at Tinley Britt and pursuing a relationship with Sarah and all those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of Bruiser and Deck, it starts off like kind of like a very odd couple situation, or odd trio, I guess. But as the season progresses, like, we see that they actually do work well together. They do kind of like align in what they want for this case. Can you talk about the development of that firm dynamic, and also working with Lana Parrilla especially?
Well, we went from being like strangers to being a tight family by the end of that. I remember there was one day where we were doing a scene, and we were sat, and then we were all very tired. It was the end of the day. I think PJ had just given me some direction on how he thought I should do my line, and I think Lana was like checking out, being like, "All right, guys, we've got to get this done. Let's." And I kind of looked in between the three of us, and there was all this sort of melee of cameras around us, and I thought, I love you guys, and this is like this incredible, dysfunctional, beautiful family. Mm-hmm. Lana is just a gift and a privilege, incredibly kind, incredibly generous. PJ is just the funniest man alive and has such a massive heart, that I think as the show progressed and we began to have a lot more respect for each other within that work environment, art, like life imitated art in lots of ways, and these became my people. So it was a really beautiful twist.
I love that. The novel / the movie kind of end in like a really definitive way. For it's not really, it's open-ended, but in terms of law, it's definitive for Rudy, let's say. I imagine that won't be the ending of the show. Would you say that there's a lot of room for future seasons? Are we going to take on more cases, or is it kind of a miniseries situation?
That's the honor. I mean, I think that in lots of ways, you just have to watch and find out. You know, this is always like Michael used to say, our showrunner used to say, this is the coming of age story of Rudy Baylor. Mm-hmm. And I suppose you have to work out where he ends up on that journey towards the end of the series. Is there scope for more? I think there's always amazing conversations to have. And when you have creators like Michael behind a show like this, there's incredible ways that it can be taken. But those will be conversations that I think that are ongoing, but we will have more definitively.
Absolutely. This is very random, but you were in my favorite episode of Dune Prophecy. I mourned for Arya Atreides. Why did this happen? But I think, yes, it was horrible. I'm just like, there's going to be a season 2. Could there be more flashbacks? Can we have some, clone Dune style cloning happening? What are your thoughts entering this universe again?
I think never say never. I loved those guys. It was such a pleasure to work on that show. It was to work with Emma Canning as well, and to do, Richard, our director. It felt like the most expensive short film I'd ever made. It was like 3 of us in a room at all times. It was a gift of a learning experience for me, and I would happily go back and serve that story if there was something that came up.
Well, I would happily watch you in it, and in season 2 of Rainmaker. Thank you.
This isn't a negligent suit. It's murder. Question is, how high up does it go?